Hello friends, welcome back to this new video. This is going to be the part 2 of 10 things I wish I knew working 10 years in the IT industry. So if you remember well, for the first part I talk about friends, the importance of having friends, but also to understand that not everyone is your friend at the workplace. Also the importance of having mentors who can help with not only understanding which direction you want to choose with your career, but helping you as well. And of course, you make it as easy as possible for both sides. And work-life balance is more than a cliche nowadays. And especially, I shared the last tip that I think is very valuable. It's not how, it's who. And finally, I talk about imposter syndrome and how nowadays everyone feels like that, and you don't have anything to worry because change is constant. People resist change. Therefore, this creates a unique opportunity for early adopters. Just keep in mind the growth mindset and you will be good. Okay, so now today let's work on this about perfectionism. Now, the irony here is that I was actually procrastinating to record this video because I think the first one did quite well, relatively speaking, to my other videos. And in my mind, I thought, yeah, I need to make this one perfect. But the reality is, there is nothing perfect as such. And if we try to do everything just perfect, what happens is then is we procrastinate often, if especially at work. So I won't have a future task that is perfect. So I procrastinate. I don't know how to deal with that. This is also true in our today life or side projects or hobbies as well. But another important part is that it also leads to exhaustion and burnout. Why we want to have everything as perfect, or like I just have written down at the top, we want to have everything just perfect. So we exhaust ourselves to make everything. Please try to make it pixel perfect, and this leads to exhaustion, to burnout. So if I had to go back at the start of my career and during the early years of my career, I had this perfectionist syndrome too much, and I didn't know how to deal with that. And most of the time, the work that I put were well too crafted, and often the feedback that I got was that there, there was some change to be done normally because we usually work in an agile way. So with all that in mind, I was not sad, but I didn't really appreciate this because I put so much time and effort to make my work just perfect. So now we have, I would never recommend someone to do that because I will just explain in a few moments. Perfectionism affects productivity drastically. And of course, there's also the question of company culture. So some company, or some teams rather, or both, depends. They like building things as quickly as possible, and then from the feedback they reiterate it and they redesign it. But I've also worked in companies that really love perfection. So you have a task or you use a story that you implement, you take a sprint, 2 weeks, and then when you do the code reviews, you are going to take another 2 or even 3 weeks because they want everything to be just perfect. And this can also lead to improper or misaligned expectation, and that can lead to exhaustion and burnout as well. So how to mitigate that is, for me, just put a quick and dirty solution, and from that get a feedback as quick as possible, whether from the product owner, from the user. I am not sure how possible is it if you're working big companies, but if you can do that, get the feedback as fast as possible functionally, and then you try to get it technically as well by doing code reviews. But the aim is to then improve upon the iteration and not try to overthink as at the first time, because most probably the first solution is not good. It's less than optimized, and there's no issue with that. The issue is overthinking it and living in like an ideal solution, trying to do everything perfect. So let's just move on to the next point, which is study the market. And I feel that many of my colleagues didn't do that, but some did it as well. And if today I want to give anyone a good advice on that, it is to study the market. Why? Because I remember working with a colleague who worked on a really ancient language. I won't cite the name, obviously. But what happened was there was a point that we worked together. This language was almost inexistent in the local scene in Mauritius. So this person had to readapt, and I actually think that the latter struggle, but you can avoid this if you study the market trends, the demands as well. So let's say you're a .NET developer. So what's next? You think to yourself, you study the latest changes, you keep up to date with the frameworks, the languages, the new features that are added, and if possible, the integration with, for example, Azure Cloud or AWS or however it works for you, or with ORMs. And you try to understand. It's actually quite easy to do, but it takes around a couple of hours, maybe each week or month. And then a bonus point will be, of course, to get certifications if you're serious about it. And from that, you try to understand what is the market needs, because, of course, there is a lot of new features, incredible new features coming on in the languages, in the frameworks, but does the market need it? Not sure about that. So you can get your answer if you make a research about it. And one piece of advice from my side is, of course, if you're interested in cutting edge languages, what you want to understand also is that they might be, in my opinion, too unstable for serious work. So this is something you want to take into consideration as well. And of course, the last point is that where do you want to focus more? In the upcoming technologies, or the legacy one, or the one that is very hot right now? For example, if you go on Stack Overflow and you see from the surveys for the past 3 years, JavaScript and Python have been dominating the entire market, and I think it resonates with other surveys as well. So you want to maybe focus on that. But on the other side, you have Java and C# that are still conquering the enterprise world. But something quite interesting I found out during the last year is that legacy technologies, especially the older ones, are not quite bad. Of course, the tooling is not the same, but due to the lack of developers who are nowadays studying languages, or they're more interested in the cutting edge technologies, so there is a huge lack of developers to work, or engineers to work on legacy technologies, even QA as well. So if you can work on that, you're going to get quite good salary, because there is a demand for that. And of course, it's quite scarce because nobody wants to work on that. So maybe you want to think about that. Okay, now I talk about it. I just pass through it. Having growth versus fixed mindset is extremely important in the world of IT, because this marketplace moves so quickly. There is so many new technologies coming up, and so what you want to do is to avoid restricting yourself to a few technologies, or I would rather say don't restrict to a single technology. My previous slide just talked about how legacy technologies is still very much in demand. But let's say previously you worked as a Flash developer and you made some serious money. Then one day out of the blue, you had Apple, especially Steve Jobs, who clashed with Flash. And they had some issues, and bam, soon this technology went completely disappeared actually. So what happens to you? You need to then quickly look out for another place, or it's complicated. Rather, what you want to do, I've talked with several experts in Mauritius, some of them are my friends, and what they recommend doing is you have one language or technology that you do for your work, and in the side, just learn one more, especially one that can be both helpful to you for example, automating some routine task, and one that is not so, or one that is quite popular, for example, JavaScript, Python, and those ones. So when tomorrow there is a shift, you can quickly adjust yourself. And of course, when I say growth mindset versus fixed mindset, what I mean to the very core of the subject is that by having a fixed mindset means that you think that you can only, that you have a limited talent, and whatever you've learned is because of this talent, and you cannot learn more, you cannot grow more. While growth mindset is you have this mindset of being able to grow more and more, and this is good and important attribute to have when working in the software development world. So for example, there was a time where AI, machine learning, blockchain, and DevOps were all rage, and they were very hype. And some people actually, what they did was jump on the bandwagon, and it proved to be ludicrous. It proved to be it worked. They had their, some of them got very good job that paid a lot, and it was like research and development, so there was not even so much stress. So by having a growth mindset, you can see these opportunities rather than fixed, because if you have a fixed mindset, you will think to yourself, I cannot do AI, I cannot learn, it's too complicated, I need to know maths well, and so on and so forth. While with a growth mindset, you say, oh, let's try it, I'm curious about this technology. And of course, now to end this slide, certifications is extremely important, because you want to certify, you want, like, certifications gives you the most important part, and that is to commit on learning. Because if you want to learn a lot of things, the possibilities are endless, AI, ML, for example, but by doing a certification in only one thing, you commit to a some part, and then you improve, but also you certify your knowledge with that. And tomorrow, if there is a chance, there's a new opportunity, the recruiters will consider you seriously because you have certifications. Now, I'm not talking about Udemy certifications. Okay, mathematics, I just talk about that, or maybe you think you need to know mathematics to be able to do tough domains like AI, machine learning, and so on and so forth. But let me tell you something. Throughout my experience, I've noticed a very interesting pattern that is almost echoed everywhere. The difference between good and great developers that I know of, I've worked with, are those who have deep mathematical knowledge. For example, complex algorithms require math knowledge. They are in fact based on maths, mathematical proof, and so on and so forth. So I won't bore you out in this video with all this. But if you want to become a great developer and you don't know where to go next, mathematics, review your mathematics. So one thing I find quite interesting and grateful with our Mauritian curriculum is the heavy emphasis that we put on mathematics. So that's good. That's very good and useful, and helps you become a much better developer. But what we also need to understand is that we don't need to have maths everywhere. So let's say you even didn't follow a degree at all, you can still work as a developer. Or if you have done a degree in some unrelated fields, such as, for example, political science, then you can convert by following boot camps, for example, or there are other ways to do these as well. So I won't mention in this video because it's going to become too long. But you have front-end development, designing API, I don't think you need to know have much deep math knowledge, because you can use libraries that are going to solve it for you. But otherwise, I think if you want to take your programming skills to another level, it's mathematics. I will illustrate this with a story that I experienced that I had recently. And like, I usually enjoy doing coding exercises on website like Code Wars, Lead Code, and HackerRank, and nowadays even Advanced Code. So I work on a solution. It took me around 1 hour, and I use a procedural approach. That is, I will write everything from scratch in a more deterministic manner. So, for example, I will use a loop, and I will loop in it and check if the value is already present and do things like that. So it can be quite optimized, especially if I avoid doing as much as queries as possible. But then after struggling for 1 hour, I had a working version and I was very happy. So on CodeWars, what is interesting is when you submit your solution, you can check the answers from others, and I was astonished, flabbergasted to see the top answer having only 2 lines of code using mathematics and solving the problem. And I assume that it was far more optimized than mine, because there wasn't even a variable. This person didn't even use a variable, I think, or maybe one, but there was no loop or anything. Just, I think, quick, simple map and some mathematics, and voila. So I just think about it, it's incredible. And the more I talk with top tier developers, and the more I'm impressed with their maths knowledge. So it's also a good thing if you've done mathematics as bachelors, because already when you start working, you have a tremendous unfair advantage, because you'll go much deeper than we software engineers will normally learn in in college. And of course, a good advice is don't fear mathematics. If you're still a student and you try to avoid mathematics, I would suggest you go the other way, the opposite way. Learn, try to do more mathematics. You have YouTube, you have so many awesome free resources now available nowadays, so you can do it without any issue. Learn mathematics. This is a difference maker. Writing. So writing helps you clarify thoughts into words, and writing is all about problem solving, unless you want to write poetry, I think, but even that might be solving a problem. So for me, what I want to tell you is that writing is a huge asset in your repertoire of problem solving, but it's not only that. It helps you understand the context, what you're solving, and when you write, it's as if you're putting everything into paper. And what happens often is that we have mental biases or blind spots that we cannot recognize when we have all the thinking going on in our brain. So by writing these down, you can identify them and tackle them. Otherwise, you might even possibly don't know that these biases are occurring. These blind spots are preventing you from solving the problem. But not only that, as software developer or IT professional, you are going to be communicating a lot, especially with remote colleagues or onshore, offshore colleagues. And by writing, by improving your writing, you can better communicate, make it more efficient. And this also results in making less errors. And this is one of the best tips I have when working. And notice something else is that the best leaders or thought leaders in a particular field are exceptional writers. So if you're in programming, in software development, you will see, like, for example, Martin Fowler is an incredible writer, and you have many others like David Heinemeier Hansson, and so many. I can't really I have so many names here, but even in Mauritius, if you look at those who are considered to be experts, to be tech influencers, and those who other people really like following their work, they are exceptional writers. So I'll just name a few people that I know who writes well. and they are very refined writers, and you can see that this writing helped them not only market themselves, which is a good point as well, but also help them solve problems and share their knowledge so that other people in the community or even internationally can profit from that. So, for example, you have Joe Conquistator, Joki, and he has over like 200 or 300 blog posts. You have Sandeep, who is the pioneer in front-end development in Mauritius, and they also have meetups groups. And you have Abdul Rahman Jahangir, who is incredible in Python and who also has some deep technical knowledge. You also have Huzair, who is also excellent with writing and goes through deep philosophical topics. So there's so many others right now. If I start taking the names, I won't end right now. So just throwing a way that you can improve your writing drastically is following George Orwell's 6 Principles of Writing. So right now it's not in the scope of this video, but I will definitely record another one because I think these principles are very interesting. So just for context, if you don't know George Orwell, so I think you know him, he's one of the best writers of our era who wrote masterpieces like 1984 and Animal Farm, so I highly recommend his reading. And to finish this one, so hobby. I think it's tremendously essential to have a hobby because life is too short. So I can't even understand how time floats so quickly. For me, I remember that I started working as if it was yesterday, my first day, my first job, and 10 years just flew by. So what I find is having a hobby also makes life more interesting, because if you keep thinking about work all the time, this will affect your productivity, your creativity, and you will also be disappointed. Why? Because you're going to invest so much time at work, in your workplace, and the return will be as much as the company is able to do in one sense. Another place is they have some structure, some process going on. So rather do your work well, do your best that you can do, but apart from that, have a hobby, because hobbies also help you develop in ways that are not possible to do when you're working a lot. So for example, let's say you have the hobby of for me, for example, I had the hobby of doing some Brazilian jiu-jitsu a few years back, and I found that this drastically helps my personality. I found that it also helped me grow. I became stronger. I can sit and work more. Incidentally, I think it was very interesting as well. So you're going to be developing in ways that you won't otherwise. And previously, people had hobbies and they work for an income, but nowadays I think it's more the opposite. People nowadays work all the time and they don't have hobby or very little, and at the end of the day they are not satisfied. So I'm going to end this video right now, but I also would like just to put in this last bonus thought is that title doesn't reflect reality. So you don't need a title to be a leader. A leader is someone who brings change, someone who tries to do other things. That's why I actually learned this a long time ago. And if you're waiting for someone to do something, this is an opportunity for you, actually, because the world changes too quickly. Everyone is waiting for someone else to appear to do the change. And if you're someone who loves learning, doing stuff, then this is an opportunity. Of course, we agree that there is no substitute for experience, but having a title is different. But also in the IT context is different, because you can work 20 years on a single technology. That doesn't mean you have improved for those 20 years. You can have someone who've worked for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but doing a lot of different things, who is able to deliver better value. So having a title, having experience doesn't really reflect reality, and doesn't mean it's better. I've also found certain places that just to prevent someone from going, or just to have them stay at the company. They give these people fancy titles, but also just to have them paying less. You have some fancy title that they give to this person, but is he or she good enough? So I just want to finish this presentation with a very interesting, interesting yet funny quote from Dilbert, known as the Dilbert principle. Employees who were never competent are promoted to management to limit the damage they can do. So it's very funny, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video. And so I have other notes, but I will do another video, in fact, because it's too long. So thank you for your time. See you later.